this NFL season. Matt Landis, Las Vegas Chris, and Scott Kellen will break down the games live every Tuesday and Friday on our BetUS NFL YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit that bell now, and never miss a show. BetUS, where the game begins.
Hi, welcome to another NFL Live Show. Week 6 of the NFL schedule is packed with great games. This week the games kick off early in the morning with the second game scheduled to be played in London as the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars face off at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Following that, the Los Angeles Chargers visit Baltimore Ravens, and we've got you covered with everything you need to know heading into the weekend. Matt Landis, Las Vegas Chris, and Scott Kellen are here to share with you their predictions, picks, and best bets for each Sunday game, as well as Monday Night Football showdown between the Buffalo Bills versus Tennessee Titans. Here's our NFL crew. Enjoy the show.
NFL Week 6 pick show, and we've got plenty of bets to get to today. But guys, right off the top, we've got fewer games this week, a few teams on bye, also tighter lines by the look of it. And last night, the latest reminder, there's no need to force a bet if we don't see an edge. It went to the dog and under in Philadelphia on Thursday night. Chris, just as easily could have gone to the favorite and the over.
I have zero problem with sitting out primetime games, and I can't recommend enough to never force bets just because there's a game on TV. Those are usually the games with the least amount of value. And I've gotten off to a nice start in previous Thursdays. I don't care. You just have to push, just like, food you don't need. Sometimes you just have to do the pushaways and stay off games.
Yeah, Scott, fortunately, a unanimous pass for us on that one. It really could have gone either way, right down to the wire.
Yeah, and I think what's important is sometimes you want to make a play. That all sounds good until you lose the game, and now all of a sudden, maybe you're 0-2 going into Sunday or something where you could have been 0-0, right? Now you just and all of a sudden maybe you go 3-2 on Sunday, but you're really 3-4 because you had to play a primetime game, and you can apply to a Sunday night, Monday night as well, and so it's tempting certainly because you want to do something, but usually in the long run you're better off waiting, and that's how you dig a hole and cost yourself money sometimes. So. Patience is great, and like we always say, sometimes some of the best plays you make are the ones you don't make.
Yeah, well, on that topic of knowing when to pick your spots, we can pull up a full screen graphic for our YouTube audience showing our records to date through the first 5 weeks of the season. Fortunately, we've been able to avoid some of those losing bets more often than not. Chris, 13-11, myself, 9-8, Scott, the leader of the pack, 11-5. We'll look to keep that going this week as we work through the Week 6 board, including a lot of best bets. A couple housekeeping items before we dig in. First off, for the audience joining us live on YouTube, thanks for being here with us. Please go ahead and give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and jump in that chat. Let us know if you have any questions, as well as who you like as we work through the Week 6 board. And if you want to get down on some of those games you like, you can always sign up today at BetUS using the promo code NFL2021 to collect a 125% sign-up bonus. For more information on that offer, check out the link below this video. And guys, let's get to the Week 6 board. Starting bright and early on Sunday morning, another London game kicking off at 9:30 Eastern, Miami at Jacksonville. And we've got the Dolphins laying 3, a total of 47. That number has been steamed over the course of the week. But Chris, it's a side you're looking at in this one.
Well, this is the first time I've had a chance to say this. It's really easy. Don't bet bad teams, but the caveat is unless you're getting points from other bad teams. So that's not a written in stone rule, but that is a first consideration when betting teams that just are not that good. Does either team belong laying points is my first consideration. Miami is number 32 in the league for me. They've been number 32 in the league for several weeks. They do get back Tua, but they still have big injury problems. I certainly worry about Jacksonville's motivation, the Urban Meyer situation, but I can't listen, I can't be the psychiatrist. I'm not in the locker room. I can only use the information that I had. And the data says that Jacksonville is the better team here, and they're getting points. So I do like Jacksonville in this spot.
Scott, it seems like not quite the same bet for you, but you'd be leaning Chris's way.
Yeah, I'm leaning their way. The one thing to know here, Jacksonville has been much better at applying pressure than Miami. I'm just looking at the numbers here. First of all, they're ninth best in allowing the fewest pressures, so they don't allow people to get on their quarterback. Miami is 10th worst in applying pressure. Translation, Jacksonville should have an ability to throw the ball here a little bit. There are some corner question marks for Miami from an injury standpoint. And then Miami is 25th worst in allowing sack percentage, so they're getting pressure on Tua or Brissett, whoever's been playing quarterback. And Jacksonville, surprisingly enough, is 11th in applying pressure. So I think they have an ability to possibly apply some pressure to Miami. And for the most part, they've kept that pressure off. They are playing without their center, Brandon Linder. So we'll see how that impacts them. But I think they should be able to have the ability and the chance to at least move the ball in this game.
Yeah, and I hear you guys both giving a good look to Jacksonville. Chris betting the Jags. Another note in that favor would be that Miami's offense last week, again, less than 23 minutes of possession. They only managed to run 51 plays. A lot of uncertainty around Tua, probably making his return, but what are we going to see out of him? So overall, I can't trust either team. I'm going to go ahead and pass this one. And that takes us on to our next game on the board, getting into the 1 p.m. Eastern window. Houston traveling to Indianapolis. And the Colts, despite that 1-4 record, a big favorite in this one, -10, total 43.5. And Scott, tell us how you see this one going down on Sunday in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and just I want to throw in one other point on that Jacksonville game real quick too. Sorry, Matt, is that winless teams are very profitable bets beginning in week 6. Now there's some other parameters of that as well, but Jacksonville does set up in a pretty good situation favoring them as well. With this game. This is a big line, and do I want to bet Houston? Probably not. But I will tell you, these teams are very close to each other in many different metrics. Just one of them, for example, they're 30th and 31st in net success rate in the league. So yet we have a 10-point line here that, to me, is probably not justified. I made the line just under 7 points in this game, and just from that standpoint, with all these different metrics where these teams are very, very similar to each other, I'm not sure how we get a justified line of 10 points in this game.
So yeah, are you betting Houston?
I'm not necessarily betting them. But when I look at these games, I will either use it to keep me off of a side, in this case, Indianapolis, or, maybe possibly I put a little flyer on Houston. But and let's remember last week, Detroit at Minnesota, Indy qualifies in a lot of really bad negative situations that play against large favorites that are average to below average teams. That set well with Minnesota and playing Detroit last week, and it applies here again. I won't go against that stuff, Chris. I don't necessarily have to be on it, but I certainly it's something that'll keep me off of one side for sure.
Well, you're 3 points off. You're talking me into Houston, and you don't even play them. It's so disappointing.
Well, here's my problem with it. It's Davis Mills on the road, right? That's and I'm trying to grasp that. But I'll say this too, like when I start to look at the numbers that he has, which are bad numbers, but in relationship to the teams they've played, yeah, they're still bad. They're not awful though. And this will be by far the easiest defense he has faced at this point, especially if the Colts have this injury problem in the secondary. They played Carolina, New England, and Buffalo. Those are all much, much better defenses than the Colts are going to bring and show him on Sunday.
Chris, it sounds like you want to play on Houston, especially after Scott's analysis, but what's keeping you off of the Texans for now?
Oh, I have Indianapolis rated a lot higher. I'm looking. Indianapolis played Seattle, the Rams, Tennessee, Baltimore, all quality offenses, yet they still rate right around just outside the top 10 defensively somehow in my rankings. So I don't have them. I couldn't possibly lean Houston's way. That's why I was surprised that Scott's numbers came the other way. When we're seeing this Indianapolis support, because this line did come down to 9 and went back up to 10, and there's talk that it may even go past the 10, which is kind of surprising because I didn't think my numbers would be reflective of what the market would actually do.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sit this one out altogether. I like to think of it as perhaps the special team special, if you will, in week 6, because if we look at what the Texans did last week, 2 missed extra points, a kickoff out of bounds, a 0-yard punt, and then go figure, Dave Coley decides to go for a 56-yard field goal attempt on a key 4th and 4 that ended up swinging the game. You couldn't see that coming with Bill Belichick, giving what you present to him on a silver platter. But I'm not sure the Colts are too much better on special teams. They missed an extra point last week. They had a field goal blocked. They missed the game-winning field goal attempt at the end of regulation. So a lot of weird stuff happening in the kicking games here. And with teams like this, I'm happy to move along and try to find value elsewhere on the week 6 board.
I see value with Indianapolis going forward, though. They're getting healthier, and they're a good team. And believe it or not, they were only supposed to be 2-3 coming out of week 5 anyway. So they're one game behind where they were supposed to be. And while Tennessee's okay, they're not that good, so far. Now, they've had their own injury concerns and stuff, but Tennessee's not that good of a team. And they have not played as well as people thought that they would. So I actually wanted to take a shot at Indianapolis to win the division. And the best I could find was like plus 270, plus 280. And instead, I found Tennessee will not make the playoffs at plus 425. Now, the reason I mention this is if you're looking for certain futures and certain props, sometimes exactly what you want to bet isn't going to get you the best number. But as I found in my Tennessee, there's nobody else from the division that's going to make the playoffs. If Tennessee beats Indianapolis in 2 weeks, well, the division bet is done anyway. So same difference, but different way to bet it. So always look at different ways to get to what you want to bet also, because there may be just different types of bets available to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. First of all, they're going I don't know what their schedule looks like. I'd have to look at that, but they're going to get T.Y. Hilton back here pretty soon, hopefully. Hopefully they shore up the secondary. And I would say that game on Monday night, this looked like, for the first time this year, really in my mind, somewhat of an Indianapolis Colts team that we expected. So I agree with you on that, Chris. Wentz looked okay, right? And they look like they could be something going forward here. I kind of like what you did there with the bet.
Yeah, Tennessee could lose 5 games in a row here very easily, and Indianapolis hits their soft spot. So, this is assuming Indianapolis beats Tennessee, obviously. So.
Yeah, nice outside the box way to look at things to extract the most value from essentially the same bet, because like you said, we're probably not going to see a wild card team coming out of the AFC South. And speaking of division winners, guys, a big matchup in the NFC North. This will be for first place. Not that the Bears are seen as too much of a contender at this stage, but the Packers taking on Chicago, laying 6 on the road, total at 44. And Scott, the Packers are your team. How do you see this one going down at Soldier Field?
Well, I would say this, Chicago is pretty bad in creating big pass plays. Matter of fact, they're worst in the league in generating big pass plays. Green Bay is 5th best in the league in creating big pass plays. And I'll just say this, road teams that create more big pass plays, more explosive plays, generally do pretty well. So that little scenario sets up well for Green Bay. Green Bay has been pretty good at limiting the big pass plays. They're 4th in the league. Now, we know Alexander's out. Maybe that changes. But again, I don't know how it changes this week because the Bears have just not been very good at generating big plays. And the Bears are also worst in the league in allowing sack percentage, and they're 5th worst in the league in applying pressure. So, all right, they're not going to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and they allow pressure on their own quarterback. Yeah, Fields is a little bit mobile. He can get out of some of that stuff maybe, but that doesn't bode real well for him. And look, we said this in the preseason, and we've said it just about every week. They are great, or I should say very good against bad teams, and they are very bad against good teams. They've lost by 20 to Cleveland and 20 to the Rams this year. It just seems hard to believe that they can beat Green Bay in this game. The Packers' rush defense is not very good, though. So they have a little bit of hope there, even though they're kind of banged up at the running back spot for the Bears. But I make the number here, just trying to see it, 4.4, so it's right there, and project 46.2. But I think it's favorable for Green Bay in this game.
Yeah, Chris, one thing Scott touched on, a possible matchup edge for the Bears and the ground game, but with the injury bug, it might be tough for them to fully capitalize.
Yeah, they're still going to have problems with injuries this week. And you know what? I'm just dying for a nice spot to bet against Green Bay. And
Agreed.
This just isn't the spot because I think the Raiders kind of quit last week. And, you know, Chicago's looking. I just can't trust anything with Chicago at the moment. But I do like the fact that the play calling is switched. It's not going to surprise me in the least if somehow Chicago pistol whips Green Bay. I don't have Green Bay rated highly. I am looking for a solid spot to bet against them. I just don't feel comfortable with the Chicago team with as many issues as they have going into this game.
Yeah, you touched on one of the key factors when I looked at this game for the first time. Chicago was probably in a good spot that we didn't know was a good spot heading into last week's game against the Raiders, with everything swirling with John Gruden's status. And on the flip side, I think the Packers might have been on the wrong side of variance in Cincinnati if you look at the fact that Mason Crosby missed an extra point as well as 3 field goals. They only went 2 for 5 scoring touchdowns in the red zone. The Packers did outgain the Bengals by almost 2 full yards per play. And if they can do that again in Chicago, gotta like their chances here. But at this number, it seems like that's pretty well accounted for in the line. So I think, just like we talked about off the top, if there's no big edge, no need to necessarily make a bet in this one. It should be a good NFC North showdown. And we can move on to the next game on the board. Kansas City traveling to Washington to take on the football team. And the Chiefs, a big road favorite in this one, laying the touchdown, but that isn't even money. So some extra juice if you want to take Washington plus the points, total at 54.5. And Chris, how do you see this one going? It seems like you've got a bit of a lean in this one.
I mentioned earlier that the 2000 Rams were the number 1 offense of all time at 7.0 yards per play. And Kansas City's defense is so bad that they're giving up more than that, 7.1 yards per play. And we've been hearing a lot about that. And, a lot of people are off this Kansas City bandwagon. And as poorly as Kansas City's played, and I've been making money betting against them, they're not for dead. They're going to be fine. This has been a tough stretch for them. I mean, any team, would struggle like this through a schedule like this. So I haven't. This Kansas City offense is unbelievable. I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw with Buffalo last week, but I mean, they should feast on this Washington defense. They should literally punish them the whole day long. Now, my actual numbers don't say that they're a play, but you really have to twist it. And logic just says, how the hell is Washington going to stop them? And Heineke, he's kind of been discovered, so to speak. There's film on him now, and they figured out how to stop him, and he really hasn't done as well as we thought he might have. I mean, he's still serviceable. He's not screwing up, but I can't see Washington keeping up with Kansas City in this situation, and I'd like to. My head says bet Kansas City under a touchdown for sure, but my metrics don't support it at this point.
Scott, kind of like the last game, a lot of advantages that Chris touched on for the heavy road favorite, but for the home dog, it could possibly come down to what they can do on the ground game against a beatable defense that they'll be going up against.
Yeah, and to Chris's point too, Matt, I made the number 5.4, so there's not value in Kansas City, but from a matchup standpoint, sometimes that, says something else. And so we know Washington can run the ball, and we know Kansas City can't stop the run. They can't stop anything really, but so that's advantage Washington. But the problem there is Kansas City is going to be able to throw the ball. Like Chris said, I think there's so much attention on this Kansas City defense and how bad it is. People are losing sight just how good this offense is. And that game last week was more about Buffalo and their defense than Kansas City's offense. And Kansas City can throw the ball. Washington can't stop the pass. And most of the time, good passing is going to beat good running in this league. That's just where we are in the NFL right now. So I think that makes it tough for Washington to be able to do anything. Kansas City, I think this could be a high-scoring game. I made the number 56 points, but obviously the total is very high, so it's hard to get over. But the Chiefs allowed 29 or more points in every game this year, but they've scored 33 or more in every game except for the 2 against Buffalo and the Chargers. And ironically, the only games that Washington hasn't scored a bunch of points in are Chargers, Buffalo, and then also New Orleans, who's a pretty good defense as well. But they've scored 30 and 34 against Atlanta and the Giants. So I think it could be pretty high scoring, but I think the matchup here favors Kansas City.
Yeah, I'll make it another lean to the Chiefs. I think the biggest factor when I look at this team this year is the turnovers are starting to get comical. It seems like every week they're not just losing the turnover battle, but they're losing it by a pretty big margin. I don't see how that's sustainable in the long term. So I think the Chiefs are due for some positive regression in the turnover department. For their defense, this is a step down in class. They've probably taken on the 4 best offenses in the AFC outside of their own over the first 5 weeks of the season. So yeah, not a good defense, but probably not as bad as what we've seen so far. I will be curious to see any news we can get on Tyreek Hill as kickoff approaches. Of course, he's a big piece to that dynamic Chiefs offense. Yeah. Moving on to the next game on the board, Minnesota at Carolina. And the Vikings opened as a bit of an underdog, but they've taken a lot of money since then, up to -2, -115, total 46. And Scott, you're in play with a teaser involving this game.
Yeah, both these teams are actually top 10 in passing defense success rate, which is a little surprising for me. And both these teams are top 2 in pressure rate, which I think is I wouldn't have expected that either. And I made the number about 1.5. That'll change in favor of the Vikings, by the way. That'll change if McCaffrey plays, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I do lean under in this game, Matt. I made the number about 42.5 points. But I like Carolina in a teaser here. Partly, they qualify in a really good situation that plays on home underdogs, coming off a loss as a favorite. They lost to the Eagles last week as a favorite. And that is a situation that has done extremely well year after year after year. So getting the Panthers here over a touchdown in a game that I think is going to be low scoring, I think is some decent value here, and I think worthy of a teaser play in this game.
Yeah, I'm leaning that way with you. And before I decide whether to pull the trigger, I need to ask Chris, what's up with these offenses? Because a couple of weeks ago, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had the Vikings as the #1 offense in the league based on your metrics. And then the past couple of weeks at home, they haven't looked so hot. And as far as the Panthers go, same thing. After 3 weeks, we thought Sam Darnold escaped the clutches of Adam Gase. Maybe he was a lot better than we thought we'd seen from him with the Jets. And now he seems to have reverted back to his old form these past couple of weeks. So what do you make of these two offenses with the Vikings and the Panthers?
Well, Carolina goes by way of McCaffrey. McCaffrey reminds me of somebody that belongs in the NBA because one of the most frustrating things about betting the NBA is trying to figure out who the hell is going to be playing each night. And it's just infuriating. And McCaffrey, for the last 2 seasons, you just never know whether this guy's going to play. And they always dangle the carrot. I mean, last week they dangled the carrot all week long. He was at practice, blah, blah, blah. Now this week it's the inverse. What happened? So I'm starting to wonder whether they were playing games last week to try to make, it look like he was going to be in when they knew he wasn't. And now they're making it look worse this week. And he's going to be a game time decision. And all of a sudden, miraculously, he's going to play. So it's not going to surprise me in the least. It just seems like a smart move to make, but Cook hasn't been playing for Minnesota, and he makes a big difference. They've been banged, Thielen's been banged up, and that affects both of the teams. I don't see an edge either way in this game at this point. I had this game at a pick'em, Carolina -0.5. But if McCaffrey's in and Carolina's getting points, I'll be all over Carolina.
Yeah, they say running back doesn't matter these days, but of course, when we're talking about guys like McCaffrey and Cook, they can have a meaningful impact. So a bit more wait and see on some injury news out of both of these backfields. Moving on to the next game on. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Matt, I was just going to add one other thing. The Vikings are coming off 3 straight home games here, too. So we haven't seen Minnesota on the road in a while. That is a spot where they've struggled a little bit from time to time. And remember, their 2 road games this year, they've allowed 27 and 34 points at Arizona and at Cincinnati. So I'm not suggesting necessarily that Carolina is going to do that. But, I like to try to find teams sometimes that have been playing in one situation, in this case at home 3 weeks in a row. And you kind of forget how this team kind of stumbles sometimes on the road and vice versa, because there's a perception about the team, and people are very easily to forget, the other side of that. So we might pick up a little bit of value just from that standpoint too, because we have not seen Minnesota on the road, where they're not always a great team either.
I really hope that McCaffrey plays.
Me too.
There are so many people that are holding Monday's newspapers already, and I'm pissed that they have it, because they're betting Minnesota like the game's already been played. And if McCaffrey's in, I don't see Minnesota winning this game.
Yeah, we'll have to keep a close eye on his status as kickoff approaches in Carolina. And we've got another big showdown on the East Coast with the Chargers heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Baltimore currently a 2.5-point favorite, total at 51.5. And Chris, you're in play on a side in this one.
Yeah, I like Baltimore in this situation. I think things have just been going too rosy for the Chargers, but that's not the reason. My metrics have Baltimore a solid play here. But there's lots to worry about because the Chargers are on a roll, and I don't like to step in front of teams on a roll. And Baltimore's off the Monday night game, and frankly, they probably didn't deserve to win that game. But boy, their offense is firing on all cylinders, and this one's going to be a little different because Jackson's going to be a little bit more limited in what he's going to be able to do. But I think, and I also want to revisit what I brought up on Tuesday. If they're going to be going for it on fourth down from their own 27-yard line, and they're going to be going for twos, and they're going to be really having this perspective of, we don't care if we lose by 21 or we lose by 1. It's the same difference. These are opportunities when you can start to look into maybe finding more value in alternate lines. So if you like for me, I'm going to be looking for, something that pays me good money if Baltimore wins by more than the 2.5 that they're currently favored. I want to see how much they're going to pay me -6.5, -7.5, because if the Chargers are down, and they're gonna go through all their downs, and they may do it in their own zone, and Baltimore can capitalize on that. So it's going to cause more variance in the final scores.
I think that point's exactly why I'm leaning toward teasing the Chargers, but it's just a lean for me at this point. Because to your point, Staley, same difference if you lose by 1 or 21 or 31. It's all about, as Herm Edwards said, playing to win the game. And, that might take away some of the value in teasers. You see in a 2.5-point underdog, it's almost an automatic look for a lot of bettors to go up through 3 and 7. But those key numbers aren't quite as key when we have coaches who could be going for it instead of kicking field goals that they'd probably make, or going for 2 instead of kicking extra points. So some of these key numbers will be worth keeping a closer eye on in Chargers games over the foreseeable future. But I am in play on this one when it comes to the total, and I like the over 51.5. When it comes to fourth down, again, both of these coaches get it. I think for the Chargers, we have to accept that the results they've been getting are unsustainable. They've just been running white hot on fourth downs lately, but the process seems to be pretty sound. And if they convert, they keep the drive alive. If they fail, they give the ball to the other team, often in good field position. Either way, that bodes pretty well for the over. And looking at both passing games here, we've seen the Ravens pass game evolving over the last couple of weeks, and they might get first-round draft pick Rashad Bateman back in the fold this week. On the other side, Justin Herbert has been doing really well against the blitz, and we know the Ravens like to blitz. I'm particularly intrigued with the matchup of Austin Eckler out of the backfield, probably getting matched up on Patrick Queen, a linebacker for Baltimore, who, let's just say, hasn't exactly impressed in pass coverage against running backs like Eckler. So I like some good matchups on both sides of the ball. And one more point on this total. When it comes to the pace, both of these teams in neutral game situations above average when it comes to their tempo. So if we see more plays, that could certainly bode well for the probability of more points. But Scott, you're our totals expert here. So what do you think of the total as well as the side on Sunday in Baltimore?
Well, my numbers would support the total with you, Matt. I make it 52.9. And I think this is, we saw this on Monday night, and it's something to just think about in some of these games, in that what happened with Baltimore? They got down and they had to start throwing the ball. And obviously they're very good at running the ball, but Indianapolis took that away. Indianapolis is actually a pretty good run defense, and they took that away. And then Baltimore just had to start firing the ball all over the place. Indy lost some people in the secondary, but that took that game to another level from a point standpoint, just because it forced them into something else, and they were very good at it. If this game is competitive and all of a sudden they start throwing the ball again, possibly, they could see some more points and a little bit different dynamic. Obviously, the Chargers are pretty good in terms of defending the big pass plays, but it is a matchup, I think, favorable for Baltimore. Baltimore, just looking here, they are in the top 10 basically running, and the Chargers are very, very poor in defending the run. And in some ways, this is kind of like the Cleveland game from last week. Cleveland can run the ball. Chargers can't stop the run. Cleveland ran it on them. On the flip side of that, Baltimore is allowing a fair amount of pressure on their quarterback this year, and the Chargers do bring a lot of pressure, so it might be a little bit of an advantage there for the Chargers. But my numbers say 3.1, 52.9. No play for me, but it would support slightly Baltimore at 2.5 and certainly support the over a little bit as well.
All right, so Chris on the Ravens, myself on the over, and Scott leaning Chris's way with the side, my way with the total. So hopefully we can see that come to fruition on Sunday in Baltimore. That game could be a barn burner. Not sure if we can say the same about the next one on the board. Cincinnati heading to Detroit, and the Bengals, a pretty decent-sized road favorite here, laying 3.5, total 47. Chris, what do you make of the prospects for your Lions heading into this one?
Well, we've got the crying coach, Dan Campbell, and you would think an 0-5 coach would, that's crying in a presser would be having one foot out the door. But a poll taken by the media had asking, do you support Dan Campbell or not, had a 96% support rate, which was even higher than a poll they had taken weeks ago. So the town loves this guy. They really like this team, and the Lions are becoming lovable losers. They've just been buried with injuries, and everything just works against them. And somehow they're just like the Energizer Bunny that just keeps on ticking. And they've been in every game some way, somehow this season. So I like Cincinnati. I think this is a rough spot for them. I think everybody's going to be gravitating toward taking, 3.5. Is Cincy good enough to go into Detroit and win by 4? That's a tough call. I mean, I don't see any value in laying Cincinnati in this situation because the Lions are darn hungry, and but they've got their problems. And if Cincinnati brings their A game, they can more than cover this spread. But I think when the home team is going to have maximum effort the entire time, I'm going to side with the home team getting the points, but I'm not going to pull out my wallet on this game.
Yeah, likewise for me, it's just a lean for me the Lions way because we know they just don't stop competing. They've been relentless in that sense and can at least give them credit for that regardless of the amount of talent or lack thereof across the roster. But Scott, when it comes to this matchup, one thing you see, the Bengals' propensity on offense to generate some pretty big passing plays.
Yeah, Bengals, they're 8th best in the league in creating big pass plays. The Lions are dead last in the league in giving up big pass plays. Go back to that statement I made, I think, in the Packer game. When road teams can out-throw in terms of explosive plays, the home team, that usually bodes pretty well. I make the number 5.4. To Chris's point, though, Cincinnati's only won one game by more than 3 points this year. So, can they win by margin, which is what they're going to have to do in this game? We'll see. Lions lost a decent receiver last week. They might get Taylor Decker back this week on the offensive line, which will help.
It doesn't look good for Decker.
No, you don't think so? Okay. So scratch that then if he doesn't come back. But and here's the other thing with the Lions. Yes, they've been competitive, but they scored 17 points again last week. They've now scored 17 or less points the last 4 weeks after scoring 33 in kind of that comeback fashion against the 49ers. So can they score enough points here? I just see these receivers for Cincinnati kind of running all over the secondary. I will say this, Lions have been decent in pressure this year, and we know Cincinnati allows pressure. We saw that last week from Green Bay as well. So that is one way I guess maybe Detroit could compete in this game. But just from a matchup standpoint and a little bit of value, looks to be on Cincinnati. I do make the number 40, about 44, so slightly into the under here. And again, if the Lions can't score, then this game possibly could go under the 47 points as well.
Yeah, we've got a question in on this game from the live chat. I'll be curious to see if Chris has any strong thoughts as the Lions fan. Who would you rather have as a head coach, the Bengals, Zach Taylor, or the Lions, Dan Campbell?
Well, I'd roll the dice with Campbell, even though he's unproven. I want somebody that's got passion and heart and the support of the commands the respect of players, and he's getting more out of nothing than I see a lot of other coaches able to do. So, but they're both unproven. So it's really apples and oranges.
And kneecaps.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, I would say this too, and I'm very guilty of this. Detroit's not a good team necessarily, but they got a quarterback who's functionable and Jared Goff. And, unlike a Houston with Davis Mills, who knows what we're going to get out of that, at least Goff is capable. And, I think that's played into, why they've been a little bit competitive here too. And so I'm very guilty about kind of forgetting who they have at quarterback and it's funny because we criticized Goff for so long at the Rams, but in this role, he's actually helpful to this team, I think.
Yeah, Goff, when things are set up well for him, can be more than adequate. And speaking of his former team, the Rams, they're involved in the next game on the board that we can dig into now, with the Rams traveling to take on the Giants, laying double digits on the road, but it's a plus 105 attached to that minus 10 for the Rams. Total 48.5. And Scott, you've got your sights set on that total.
Yeah, I made the number, I think about 50 or so in this game. So not a ton of value on the over, but I'm going to play the over more so on the matchups. And quite frankly, to be honest, personally, I will wait in this thing a little bit just to see what the outcome is from some of these Giant injuries. But obviously, we're doing the show on Friday. From the Rams are number one in the league and not allowing sack pressure. And the Giants, they can't get to the quarterback. So number one, the Rams should have all day to throw the ball against this Giants team and should be able to move and score points in this game. So I don't think there's any problem there. But kind of sneaky, the Rams are the 8th best team in the league in net offensive pass success rate. So I'd like to have Daniel Jones, but if it's Glennon, not the end of the world. I'm really more interested in see who plays from the receiver standpoint. Because the Rams aren't that good. They're third worst in net defensive pass success rate. So they have the ability to give up some plays in the passing game. So if the Giants can get some guys healthy here, especially at the receiver position, I think at the very least they could just score in at the end of the game when they're down by a whole bunch of points, and it doesn't matter because I think the Rams are definitely going to get their points. And by the way, if this number for some reason would come down into a teaser range where you could get a 6-point teaser down under 3, I would definitely consider teasing the Rams in this game as well.
Yeah, it might take some news on Daniel Jones to see that kind of line movement. And I think that something we saw last week as we were recording some breaking news, Teddy Bridgewater being cleared. Chris, keep us informed if you see anything similar with Daniel Jones, because right now, it's just a pass for me. Too many Giants injuries to try to sift through at the current situation. What do you make of this one, and what would it take to give you any sort of strong inclination one way or the other?
Well, touching base back on a game we just covered, McCaffrey is listed as doubtful, unfortunately, so we'll never get to see what would have happened. That would have made things interesting. So that line's kind of scooting up a little bit. As far as the Rams games goes, boy, you know what? I pass. This has so many issues involved with it, and the Giants have been showing a lot of promise on offense recently, and you're basically essentially just throwing up players up in the air and seeing who lands and is available to play this week. And you can't handicap like that. My money is better spent on more reliable information and such. Scott already touched on all the other highlights. If somehow miraculously this game got lower, you'd obviously want to consider the Rams in a teaser. But I just don't have the inclination to take either side or or the total here.
Yeah, no harm with passing this one. That can tie a bow on the early slate on Sunday, and we can call a quick timeout here for our YouTube audience joining us live, thanks for being here with us. We'd appreciate it if you could give our video a quick thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and again, feel free to jump in that chat, fire in any questions or any thoughts you have as we work our way down the Week 6 board. And with that, we'll move right along to the late window on Sunday. Arizona traveling to Cleveland, and the Cardinals are the undefeated team, but it's the Browns who are the decided favorite here. This line's up to 3.5, minus 105 vig attached to the Browns, laying the hook, and the total 49.5. We've seen the under get steamed this week with some weather concerns, also some concerns about Kyler Murray. And Chris, even with those Kyler Murray concerns, you can't help getting involved on a side in this matchup.
Yeah, well, Nick Chubb's going to be out of this game, and this is where they were supposed to, wreak havoc on the Arizona defense. You know what? This is a horrible situation for Arizona. It's going to be raining. It might be windy. Arizona hasn't lost a game. Cleveland off a bad loss. But, I can't, like I mentioned before, I can't be a psychologist. I can't catch the falling knife of exactly when a team's going to stop winning. Arizona's doing what they can to win these games. And they don't always look pretty, but I see value here. There's just no way that Cleveland has played 3.5 points better than Arizona. This is, there's value here. Now, am I jumping up and down and really happy about it? Does my brain, do my lying eyes tell me Cleveland should roll at home? Of course it does. But that doesn't win. So my metrics say Cleveland doesn't deserve to be favored by this many. And I think Mayfield's been exposed. I think there's a confidence issue there. That last drive was an embarrassment. He's been ridiculed on it. He couldn't find the sidelines. He's dinking and dunking with a minute to go in the game. He's just not getting some things. So if with Chubb's out, that helps out Arizona. And hopefully Murray is not too banged up, because if he is, well, then that's bad news for my wallet.
Yeah, I've got a quick follow-up for one of the points that you made, kind of crediting the Cardinals, of course, for finding ways to win games. And we have to give credit where it's due for a 5-0 start. Certainly the Cardinals have been good to start the season, but I also feel like they've been pretty fortunate. So, Chris, I want to see what you make of the fact that their fourth down defense is basically the equivalent of the Chargers' fourth down offense. We touched on that, just running unsustainably hot of late. The Niners just 1 of 5 on fourth down against the Cardinals last week, including a huge goal line stand early in the game. And the Niners had 6 drives into Arizona territory without scoring a point. So possibly some regression coming the Cardinals' way. They're also number 4 in the league. If we look at EPA off of turnovers, that's a metric that friend of the show, Cleve TA, has been pulling this season. And the Browns on the other end of the spectrum at second worst in the league, just 31st in EPA off of turnovers. So yes, the Cardinals have been good to start the season, but they've also gotten pretty fortunate. How do you reconcile some of these metrics that I've just mentioned with the fact that they are sitting at 5-0, and that makes them look pretty appealing as the 3.5 point underdog?
Well, I guess I look at it from the perspective of what happens if you bet you started betting against the St. Louis Cardinals on their 5-game winning streak as they were due to lose, and 18 games later, 13 games later, they're still winning. So it's a catch the falling knife. When do things turn around? When is the perfect storm? You can only lose once betting with what's happening. If you try to predict that the opposite's going to happen, well, you can keep on doing that week after week after week. And that's how I made great money last week betting against Kansas City and going with some other teams where they just kept on doing the same thing week after week after week. And people were expecting the other thing to happen. That's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far off track with this game, but as you say that, I immediately think about the fact that you are on the Ravens this week, and the Chargers are that team that's been really streaky, and a lot of the talk is that they're running, again, unsustainably hot in some high leverage moments. So I guess, again, it seems like there must be other factors for being in play on the Ravens. I mean, you are betting against a pretty streaky team in the Chargers, but it seems like you want to stay away from betting against the streaky team. In fact, betting on the streaking Arizona Cardinals here.
I would say that the decision on those types of streaks is a support issue more than anything else. It's more than an afterthought. It's something that you look at and that you're aware of, but to make it a primary handicapping concern, forget it.
Yeah, understood. Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there too much, but I think that's a fascinating peek behind the curtain at the mind of a pro bettor. I mean, you make a good living doing this, so I think that's valuable insight for the audience. And Scott, I want to get your take on this one too. Again, the ground game could be a really decisive factor. So how do you think the showdown between the Cardinals and Browns is going to shake out on Sunday?
Well, I first of all, I played this total under 54 on Monday. That's obviously long gone now. I make the number about 49, so the number is kind of where it's at. Although that does not factor in the fact that there's a win, so maybe you bump that down a little bit. I went under last week, and thankfully neither teams individually scored more than the total in that Brown Charger game, but they scored 89 points and ruined my under 48.5. So that never had a chance. But kind of the same philosophy here, where I think Cleveland can run the ball in Arizona. Yes, Chubb is out, but I think Kareem Hunt obviously is very, very good. Look, Cleveland averages 5.4 yards a rush. Arizona gives up 5.4 yards a rush. The success for Cleveland here, to me, is going to come via the run, and then obviously play action maybe factors into that. I make the number about 3.3 here. That factors in Rodney Hudson being out. I'm not playing Cleveland. And let's look at Cleveland here. Who have they beat this year? They beat Houston 31-21, Chicago 26-6, and the Vikings 14-7. They lost to Kansas City and lost to the Chargers, the two good teams that they played. And I look at Arizona's schedule pretty good here, right? I mean, they've beaten some teams. The Rams, I guess I look at it, they've really only beaten the Rams that are a really good team. But still, I'm not interested in getting in front of Arizona here and taking Cleveland. I will say this, though. Arizona does qualify in a decent situation that plays against teams coming off a good home performance going on the road. So there is something there. Maybe that letdown is coming because of that situation, which historically has been pretty good. But I lean under here, and really no value for me on the side.
This is one of those games that just annoys the heck out of me because it's the entire planet's on Cleveland, and it's one of those games where if Cleveland wins, it's like you never hear the end of it. How the hell could anybody not have seen this? It was the easiest game in the world. And then if Cleveland doesn't win, it's like, boy, I didn't see that coming, and then they move on. It's like you'll never get credit for being you don't just sit there and go against people for the sake of going people. I'm on Arizona because of the solid metrics. But boy, it's tough to be in these situations when you're on the other side and all you do is hear how easy it is from everybody all week long. So it's like you get tortured even extra. And then you get the I told you so's afterward. But so even if you win, you were tortured the whole week placing that bet. And then it's a quick move on if you end up winning. But you cash.
Well, hey, Chris, I think it speaks to, let's say you lose this bet, right? Your metrics are good. You've been successful with it. So maybe you've done this long enough to have faith in this regardless. But when everyone's on one side, you're on the other side, and then you lose that bet, what if this situation comes up next week again? Do you bail on that, right? And that's just a mind game from a sports betting standpoint that you have to deal with, right? You have to stay convicted, disciplined, and believe in your process. You create a process you think's good. You believe in it. And if you're right, that thing's going to work out over the long haul. But as bettors, this is what you get challenged with every single week, and it plays with your mind. And it's tough to stay on track sometimes when that, especially if you lose 3 or 4 of these, right? You're going to be really tested in that, and
which you're going to.
Thing. Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, well, speaking of the mind game, moving on to the next game on our board, it might take some mental gymnastics to make heads or tails of this one. We've got the Raiders taking on the Broncos in Denver. The Broncos seemed up to a 4-point favorite. That's a pretty recent move off of the 3.5. Total 43.5. And Chris, a lot of questions about the Raiders coaching situation. What do you make of that dynamic as it pertains to this game?
You know what? I don't know what to make out of the dynamic. Usually you'll see a 1 to 2 game boost in a situation like this with the effort. I really feel the Raiders quit last week. They were just a no-show against Chicago, and that bothers me. They started out the first 3 games like gangbusters, and these last 2 games have been big disappointments. And how can I expect them to turn it back on even with the new coach boost? I can't. So, and Denver, they started off their first 3 games against weak competition, and they folded like a paper napkin in the last 2 weeks. They came back and had a remote chance of beating Pittsburgh last week, but they farted away the whole first half. So there's trouble in paradise in Denver also. So for me, I feel like this is a dog or pass situation. But I'm not going to have an investment in this game. It just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, same here. I think the Raiders are such a wild card this week. I'm happy to sit back and try to learn a little bit about this team as they move on again with a new interim head coach. But Scott, what do you make of this big AFC West showdown? Two teams that might be heading in the wrong direction, but still some pretty good records and a lot to play for.
Yeah, the total is basically spot on for me. I do show a little value with Denver. Both these teams, though, have below average offenses by my metrics and actually above average defenses, which is kind of weird to say for the Raiders, but that's where they are. And, I show value in Denver, but do I want to lay points with Denver? No, not really. The only comment on the coaching thing, I heard some people this week who are very well in tune with the league and the coaches and stuff. And we'll see what we get out of this. But this guy, the special teams coach that they have running the team now, very highly respected in the league, a no BS guy, a motivator. We'll see what comes from that. The downside is, I never loved Gruden as a play caller, but I'm not sure Greg Olson's actually better than Gruden. So you could lose something there. But if this coach is a good leader, as I kind of said on the Tuesday show, maybe they get a little bump here, but there's no play for me in this game.
Yeah, I think it's a unanimous pass. Just so many unknowns as the Raiders head to Denver this weekend. But we've got some more known commodities and a pretty big showdown with the next game on our board. Dallas traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. The Cowboys, a road favorite, laying 3 with some heavy juice, -120 attached to that -3 for the Cowboys. Total at 50.5. That's been steamed to the over the course of the past few days. And Scott, it seems like there might be some good reason for that total steam when it comes to the way the Dallas offense can generate some big plays in the passing game.
Yeah, they're Dallas top 10 in generating big pass plays. New England 11th worst in defending those big pass plays. So they could generate something here. There are some decent situations either going against Dallas or on New England here. But I made the number about 5.5, and I made the total about 50.5. So it's kind of right on the number, basically. So a little bit of value with Dallas here. Actually, more than a little bit of value with Dallas, but the situation's favoring New England. I think New England's going to get a little bit healthier in terms of the offensive line, which will help them. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this New England team, and Dallas does seem to be playing pretty well. And I don't know if I had to do anything here, I would take Dallas, but it's no play for me in this game.
And it sounds like you're really close to pulling the trigger on Dallas, especially as this number has continued to trickle down over the course of the week. Is there anything that could nudge you to go ahead and fire in a bet on the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, are we getting down to 3 right now on this at all?
Yeah, it's 3 -120.
Yeah, I mean, if we got under 3, certainly, I think, because this Dallas team's not bad. And I just don't know how New England can score with them. And we saw what New England did to Brady on that Sunday night game, but I'm not sure if they can duplicate that. And you get a low number here. I just think Dallas is better equipped to outscore them. I think they have a significantly better offense, and defensively, these two teams are somewhat comparable. So that lends the way. And again, I'll go back to this: road teams more explosive plays than the home team generally works out for the road team. And the stats right now show that they'll probably win that battle.
I had to laugh when you said, I just don't know how they're going to be able to do anything against this Dallas defense. When you look back at our divisional previews, we had the Dallas defense completely written off, and we thought the New England offensive line was going to just be steamrolling people.
I know. It's funny how that changes pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, so I pivoted on these teams. I was really optimistic about New England at the start of the season, and they just seem to have their issues. And I wasn't very high on Dallas, and Dallas is fundamentally playing very well, all parts of the ball. They finally have a defensive coordinator that can do his job, and the offense is balanced. It's so balanced, it's scary. And they've got the 2 running backs. They've got the wide receiver. They have the whole program there. I mean, as over-promoted as Dallas is year after year, they're pretty darn good. They're probably underhyped at this point. So yeah. So I show value here in Dallas, and I'm just letting the line sink because I think Dallas just isn't going to get the great spot support here. You've got the home Belichick dog here, and New England's getting the support. But for the show purposes, I'll take the Dallas, add it to my playlist, -3, -120.
All right, Chris, you and I guess not quite going head to head because I can't bet the Patriots at this number, but I would certainly lean their way. And I did take them earlier in the week when the number was a decent bit better for them. When I look at this one, we talked about EPA off of turnovers earlier. The Cowboys, number 2 in the league in that metric, and that could have them ripe for some regression. They have been good, but again, when there's that much good fortune, that tends to come back to earth at some point. Also, some injuries. Tyron Smith, a key cog on the offensive line, a surprise add to the injury report on Thursday for the Cowboys. So we'll try to keep a close eye on his status. Also, Diggs, a ball hawk on defense. It seems like he's getting an interception just, about every other possession when he steps on the field. So a couple big injuries to monitor for Dallas. I also think this has the makings of buy low, sell high type of spot with the Cowboys. Scott, you touched earlier on on somebody who was coming off of 3 straight home games that might be overvalued. I think it was
Vikings.
The Vikings. Yeah. The Cowboys, same thing here, off of pretty middling teams at that with the Eagles, Panthers, and the Giants. So yes, the Cowboys have been very good. No disputing Chris's notion that they are firing on all cylinders. But I also think that just the spot they've been put in recent weeks might be elevating their perception perhaps a tad too much. And on the Patriots side of things, that was an ugly win in Houston last week, but they were down 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. It's looking like they'll get at least a couple guys back this week. So while the Patriots O-line has not impressed like we thought it would this season, getting some of their starters back could make a big difference. One more thing I'll add here. I know we talked about the line being 3 -120 for Dallas. I'm logged in on BetUS right now, and I'm seeing it at a flat 3.5. So if you are interested in the Patriots side of things, again, you might want to go ahead and take advantage of that promo code and sign up at BetUS today using the promo code NFL 2021. Take that 125% sign-up bonus, and you could get a number on the Patriots that's not available anywhere else in the marketplace as we record this.
Just to get back, I'm looking to see if Diggs is going to be in or not, number one. I haven't placed a wager on this. And number 2, Dallas is at least road tested, unlike Minnesota, who didn't do well on the road. Dallas went in and beat the Chargers, and they should have beaten Tampa Bay on opening day.
Yeah, well said. I think there's plenty to be said for both sides. And again, if somebody's on 3.5 or better on the dog and you're laying 3 with the favorite, that's not necessarily going head to head when we're talking about getting on or off the 3.
Yeah.
That does it for the Sunday late window. We've got 2 primetime games to get to wrap up the Week 6 board, starting with Sunday Night Football, the Seahawks traveling across the country to Pittsburgh, and the Steelers laying 5 points, a low total of 42.5. And Chris, a big X factor in this one when it comes down to the Seahawks going at it without Russell Wilson.
Well, how much is Russell Wilson worth? No, really, how much is he worth? Does anybody know? I mean, this is one of the few instances where, typically when you have a starting quarterback go out, there's usually like a 2 to 3, maybe 4-point adjustment. But when it comes to Wilson, traditionally the adjustment's been over a touchdown. It's tough to gauge. But we did see Geno Smith come in and do a great job in relief. And boy, he looked really serviceable. He didn't do anything wrong. Sure, the game ended on an interception that really wasn't his fault. So, but now Pittsburgh has time to prepare for Geno Smith, and we have a long track record of mediocrity. So it's really tough and unpredictable. Has Geno Smith learned something from being with Seattle? Is something absorbed, and is he going to come back and pull a Fitzpatrick Miami situation, or is he going to fold like a paper napkin? There's a lot of unknowns here. It's hard to put a true value on the loss of Wilson because I don't think anybody thinks much of the rest of the team and thinks he's been carrying the team as it is. So, but you can't trust Pittsburgh here either. This is, if the line keeps on going up, I'm going to pop in on Seattle just because it's closer to 2 bad teams. Take the bad team plus the points.
Yeah, Scott, the key question, Chris touched on it. Just how much is Russell Wilson worth? And it seems like you've got some metrics that give you some pretty decent conviction on an answer to that all important question in this one.
I think he's worth about 7 points. Now, obviously, if Geno Smith all of a sudden plays like he did last week, that would change. But Russell Wilson was averaging 8 yards a pass this year. Geno came in last week, to what Chris said, averaged 7.7 yards a pass. He was actually pretty good. But historically, he has been at 5.7 yards a pass. Now, ironically, Russell Wilson historically has been 6.7 yards a pass. So he was well exceeding what his average over his career was. But he was still about 1 yard per pass better than what Geno Smith has been for his career. So I think it's worth about 7 points here. And the other thing, again, Pittsburgh's no great shakes here, but Seattle, 5th worst and highest percentage of sacks allowed. Pittsburgh, 6th best in applying pressure. They're going to have time to plan for Geno. I think they will put pressure on Geno. I think that could be problematic. I do kind of look at this Seattle team. They're kind of like the Packers. They lose Rodgers, and the team kind of falls apart a little bit. We may see a little bit of that as well with Geno Smith. If this line would go up to 6, I have some other metrics that kind of identify if a play is a good teaser play or not, assuming we get in somewhat the right range of numbers. If this would go up to 6, I would consider Pittsburgh in a teaser in this game. I make the number 5.3, project about 40 points, but I would consider Pittsburgh in a teaser if it went up.
I know we've talked a lot over the early part of the season about teasing, again, like a lot of people will say, through the key numbers of 3 and 7. So when you mentioned looking at the Steelers, teasing them down if this hits 6, what do you make of that as opposed to trying to keep in mind the value of really teasing when you can cross through the key number of 7 as well?
Well, I think it's 2 things, and it's a good point, Matt. You want to look at, okay, if I'm laying 120 in a 6-point teaser, what percentage do I need to win? And I'm just looking. I don't know if I have my teaser sheet here or not. I don't think I have it in front of me, but
it's like 73%.
Yeah, I mean that's what you need to win, right? And if you're teasing 6 points, you're from a 6 down to pick 'em and not crossing over those numbers. You're not technically probably in a plus EV situation there. But I do have other metrics that I look at that get me up closer to about an 80% success rate. And the matchup in this game favors that and suggests that this would be a good teaser play, even though it's 6 down there. Now, as Chris has pointed out before as well, on a 6, you don't necessarily need to do a teaser. A money line parlay, especially if you have 2 teams at 6, might be the better option. Because again, I don't have my numbers in front of me, but you're probably closer to about a 110 kind of rate on 2 money line parlay as opposed to a 120 that you lay on a teaser. So that's another option when you have a number around this neighborhood.
Yeah, when the money line hits around the 265 area, that's when you're going to be teeter-tottering between playing money lines and teasers.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and one more follow-up to this potential of teasing the Steelers. You mentioned if it gets up to 6, you'd want to take them down. But, of course, that would be taking them down to pick them, which, that 0 is pretty meaningless with the, very minimal probability of seeing a tie in this one or any NFL game for that matter. So if we just see a tick up to 5.5, that could, still get you about the same amount of value. But are you drawing a line at 6 being the point you need to really give strong consideration to that teaser?
Well, it's interesting you say that. And I was looking this morning, 5.5-point favorites are only winning the game straight up. And this was going back to 1983. I didn't check it more recently where the scoring is obviously changed slightly because of the extra points and stuff, but they're only winning the game about 65% of the time. So I kind of stopped there because that's pretty low, right? Compared to what we know we need. Chris had just kind of said closer to 73%. So from that standpoint, it didn't look like 5.5 was real favorable. So I don't think I'd pursue that because I was, again, thinking like maybe a money line parlay. Now, again, you don't necessarily have to be at 73% because the money line parlay is probably going to be a lower money line, of course, but I don't think I would entertain it at the 5.5.
Got it. Yeah, and I think I'm just not going to entertain a bet on this one altogether. I can't lay it with the Steelers offense, and I'm in no rush to back Geno Smith. I know he looked pretty good in spots when forced into action last Thursday night, but that was also largely against a Rams defense in prevent mode. So going to stay away from this one. My only point, something I'll be looking out for, the Seahawks defense, not very highly regarded in the first place, but they're due for some third down regression. The last 2 weeks, they've held their opponents to just 4 of 24. That's only 17%. So if the Steelers can convert third downs at a higher rate, it might get ugly before it gets better for the Seahawks. That'll do it for our Sunday night breakdown. We've got one more primetime game to go and a lot of action for the three of us in this one. The Bills traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Buffalo laying 6 at reduced VIG, total 53.5. And Chris, I'm kind of scared to say it, but you and I going head to head on the sides in this one.
Well, this is just a cookie cutter type situation where people are looking at Buffalo, who's coming off their, quote, huge Super Bowl-like win against Kansas City where they just whumped them. You can't possibly look any better. And now they have to go on the road and play in Tennessee and get up for yet another game. And this is just a classic spot where you're supposed to take Tennessee. They're the home team. They're getting 6 points. And it's as if people don't realize that these situationals, like, long road trips and sandwich spots and letdown games and look-ahead games are not already factored into these lines. It's like people think, oh, I'm the only one handicapping this, and this is the angle we play. This stuff's already in the line. Trust me, these teams are not 6 points apart, okay? It's not even close. And if you want to guess when a team's going to show up and when a team is not going to show up, good luck doing it. I follow the numbers, and if Buffalo lays a turd sandwich on Monday night, okay, fine. But I'm not going to be the prognosticator to try to guess when Tennessee shows up and when they don't, and when Buffalo has a letdown game. I have to play the numbers because it's already factored in to the line in the first place that it's supposed to be a letdown game. There's no way this line would be under 7 otherwise.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in and go the other way with the Titans. And to be clear, it has nothing to do with the notion of a letdown spot for Buffalo. I've heard a lot of people on Tennessee using that narrative. But, to the, Bills' defense, this is a Monday night game. They're going to be playing on primetime TV. They have extra rest off of Sunday night last week. So I don't see how it's really a letdown spot in that sense. And let's not forget, almost a year ago to the day, they got their doors blown off in Tennessee. So there's also the revenge narrative. I tend not to make much of revenge narratives or letdown spot narratives. So it's kind of just a wash to me. So by no means am I on Tennessee because of any, sense of a Buffalo letdown being around the corner. And also I feel like I can already hear Bills Mafia just blasting me on the YouTube comment section from this game clip. And I want to be clear. I do think the Bills are the best team in the league, and I take nothing away from the way they've started the season. To me, though, this is a classic case of looking at numbers, not teams. And in my eyes, this 6 makes it worth getting in play on the Titans, because when I look at the Bills, one of the first things that stands out, they're plus 11 in turnovers so far this season. The next best team in the league is plus 7. That's a huge gap between number 1 and the rest of the pack in the NFL. Again, Chris, to your point, we had a discussion earlier. You can't always predict exactly when this regression is going to come. So I can't say with certainty that this is the game that it shows up. But I can say with a high level of confidence that before too long, it is going to at least regress in the direction of the mean. So turnover luck could be a big factor here. Also, the way these teams match up, the Bills, I think, are generally optimal defensively to encourage the opposition to run. But that could be playing with fire with the Titans ground game led by Derrick Henry. And aside from the ground game, just through the passing game for the Titans, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones coming back. So that gives them a lot more to work with in the passing game than we've seen from them in recent weeks. Altogether, I'm not excited to step in front of a possible runaway train with the Buffalo Bills. I have a lot of respect for their start to the season. I think they're on the fast track to the number 1 seed. But this point spread can be the great equalizer. And to me, that's enough to get in play on the Titans. Scott, I know you've got, not just the side here. You're going to close out your teaser you mentioned earlier with Carolina, plus a bet on the total.
Yeah, we're going to do that. And Bills Mafia, I have your back here. That game they got blown out last year, both teams averaged 5.4 yards a play. The Bills were 3-0 negative turnover. They turned it over 3 times deep inside their territory, where Tennessee took the ball, and I don't have it in front of me, at the 12, 25, and 30-yard line, and turned all 3 of those into touchdowns. So there's a little bit of that. I used to follow turnovers a lot from a regression standpoint, but what I did find out was the really, really, really good teams, they don't as much regress maybe as some of the teams that maybe are just doing very well and from a turnover margin standpoint that maybe aren't as good. So we'll see what happens there. And Julio Jones coming back is big. A.J. Brown, from a yards per route standpoint, has not been great this year, but Julio Jones has been. But I saw what I needed to see last week from Buffalo in that defense. That is, as Chris mentioned earlier, that Kansas City offense is very good, and Buffalo was very good, I think, defensively against them. And Tennessee, they allow a whole bunch of sacks. Buffalo is very good at getting the quarterback. They can't create big pass plays. Now, some of that, they haven't had their receivers, so we'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt there. But Buffalo doesn't allow big pass plays. Tennessee, they're bad in net offensive success rate. Buffalo, very good defensively. So you got a lot of these things where Buffalo is very good, where Tennessee is bad. That adds up. I make this number about 8.4 points in favor of Buffalo, and that's factoring Julio coming back. So I think it is a very good teaser play. And Tennessee this year has faced the 31st, 29th, 28th, 21st, and 18th worst defenses by my metrics. And now they're going to face the top defense in the league. When they faced the two best defenses that they faced this year, which were the 21st and 18th worst defenses, they only scored 13 and 24 points. Again, one of those games, they didn't have their receivers. So I'm respective of that. But I just don't know how they get to a ton of points in this game. And I think Buffalo can get enough points here to win the game. But that also plays into the total. I make the total about 50 points here. I think there's a little bit of value on the under here. And that is strictly, more than anything, just a numbers play, my numbers versus what the total is. So I like Buffalo in the teaser, and I like him in the under as well.
Yeah, I should mention this. I've in 10, 11 years of my metrics, I've never had a team rated at the number I have it rated. And it's not even close. Buffalo is playing both sides of the ball like I've never seen a team play in the 10, 11 years I've been running my model. So again, anything can happen in one game and they may crash down to earth. But they spent their off season addressing their specific needs, and apparently they did a darn good job.
Yeah, if Tennessee just gets blown out in this one, I can't say you guys didn't tell me.
Well,
go ahead,
and Matt, look, I mean, if this is a spot, as Chris said earlier, this is a spot for Tennessee to come to play, and if they win this game, I'm not shocked. I mean, because the situation is set up for them, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I will say, and I know your play, Matt, was not based on a letdown or anything, but I think McDermott is a hell of a coach, and I think that adds to, he'll have him ready, and I don't think he'll let him let down. But who knows, right? It is the perfect situation for him. I just don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see.
The margin between winning and losing is so much closer than people realize for every single game. I mean, if you really look at all the games every week, every single week there's just games that you just never expected this to happen, or that shouldn't have happened, or just certain things send a game one direction or the other. You don't have a lot of room for error, and you can end up looking really bad sometimes, even though you might have had the good right handicap, some way, somehow. You just don't know. So you just have to follow your system and stick with it, and you're going to look like a hero sometimes, and you're going to look like an idiot other times.
Yeah, well, speaking of standing by your convictions, at this point, I think we're at a good stage to get into a recap of our best bets for the week. So we've got a full screen graphic to pull up for the YouTube audience, and we can see, again, of course, Chris and I going head-to-head on that Monday night game. Chris laying the 6 with Buffalo, myself taking the 6 with Tennessee. Chris also taking the points with the Jags +3, laying 2.5 with Baltimore, taking 3.5 with Arizona. And if you listened carefully to our breakdown on the Patriots-Cowboys game, another side that Chris has decided to jump in on. I'm on a total, as well as the Titans +6. I'm looking at the Chargers-Ravens game to go over 51.5. And Scott has a 2-team teaser, the Panthers +8 paired with the Bills down to pick 'em, the Rams and Giants over 48.5, and the Bills and Titans under 53.5. That's what we've got for everybody for week 6. Those are the picks. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you watching us on YouTube, one more time, please go ahead and give us a quick thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and jump in the comments with your thoughts on any of our bets. And if you disagree, or hopefully you agree with some of them as well, you can get and play yourself by signing up today at BetUS using the promo code NFL2021 to collect a 125% sign-up bonus. And whichever way you play things this weekend, best of luck with your Week 6 action. We'll be back with you live on Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. That'll be our early look at Week 7. We'll see you then right back here at BetUS, where the game begins.